This episode of the Practice of Therapy podcast is brought to you by Green Oak Accounting and TherapyNotes, greenoakaccounting.com and therapynotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 158 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a good week or weekend whenever you might be listening to this. I'm Gordon Brewer, and glad you joined me for the podcast. If this is your first time listening in, welcome, and I hope you'll come back and listen to some more episodes. This is a special episode in that it's going to be the last episode for 2020. I thought I'd never say that. But anyway, looking forward to 2021 as I can dare say most all of us are, in that we're ready for to get out of this kind of quagmire we've been in this whole year with this COVID pandemic and just all the things that have been going on. It's a different year, and that's an understatement, I know. And I think I have said that for the last several episodes, just about how this year has been such a year of change and such a year of challenges. But on the optimistic side, I think we're learning, and I think we're exercising a lot of resilience as we move through the end of this year. As we're bringing 2020 to a close, there's just a lot of things that I know that I have learned this past year, despite all the challenges. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this particular episode, in that I wanted to keep racism and social justice issues kind of in the forefront, because I feel like this is that's one small way in which I can use this platform to give those things voice. I've had a lot of learning to do over this past year, or relearning rather, just around how we interact with each other, and how our ethnicity and our race, and however you want to refer to that, affects us as people. And one of the things that I think that has gone on way too long is that we've had an elephant in the room around this particular issue, with just not really acknowledging the imbalance of power, the inequities that exist in our society. And I think with this year, we've brought that into the forefront. And so this particular episode, this last episode of 2020, is really dedicated to that. And what we're doing is going back and listening to some clips of some people that certainly influenced me this past year, and really learned from them just about what it means to be a person that is a person of color, or a black or brown person, and just how racism has affected them in their lives, not only in the past, but also in the present. So anyway, I'm looking forward to you getting to hear from four people in particular. We've got Bewindi Bobb, who is from episode 138, and LaToya Smith from episode 145, and Linda Sanderville from episode 150, and Danielle Branche from episode number 151. And again, I just love the message that they had, and I really appreciate their vulnerability and their candor about racism and just about social justice, and how it affects them as not only as therapists and in the caring profession, but also how it affecting their communities. So anyway, we'll get to them in here in just a minute. One of the things I'd like to invite you to do here as we bring the year to a close is to think about next year of joining me for a focus group or some individual consulting. It's one of the things that I get a lot of requests for from people just by email and through social media, just asking about when am I going to have another focus group or about just working with me individually. So in the month of January, I'm going to be starting up the next cohort of a focus group, and focus groups are really there to help you get some mentoring and coaching in a group context. Another name that they're referred to as are Mastermind Groups, and that's a name we hear a lot of here lately, but it's a real intensive way to dive in deep and not only learn for yourself, but also learn from others. The focus groups are also small groups, so do that intentionally to kind of make sure that we give everyone voice within that group. It's usually 8 to 6 people, 8 people certainly at the most, where we get together twice a month for an hour and just talk about our practices and the things that we're working on. Some weeks or sometimes during the month, we might have a hot seat where one particular person presents an issue that they're working on or trying to figure out about their practice. And then some weeks, sometimes we just have a great just general conversation and catch up with each other. But it's a great way to kind of develop a close, intimate group, not ooh-la-la intimacy, but just being able to have a group of trusted peers where you can share with them confidential stuff about your practice and the things that you're working on. And also do it in an environment where you can be supported and not judged or not feel judged or any of that sort of thing. So I would invite you to go over and check it out. Go over to practiceoftherapy.com/focus group, and you can apply there and also find out more information. Again, going to be starting in January of 2021, and look forward to hearing from you. And if you're on my email list or whatever, you'll be getting more information there as well. But anyway, I know that every time I've been a part of a focus group, it has just allowed me to kind of boost my practice forward just exponentially. I know one of the big things that I'll share here real quickly is that a couple of years ago, I was trying to make the decision of moving from having contractors to employees, and being able to talk to other people within the focus group that had done exactly that thing was just huge for me, of really navigating and learning how to do that. And as a result of that, my practice has become much more profitable, of moving from a contractor model to an employee model. Too much information to get into right now, but anyway, love to have you join me for a focus group. Again, practiceoftherapy.com/focus group. And also, before we get to our interview clips, I'd like to remind you to go over and check out our sponsors. Green Oak Accounting, greenoakaccounting.com, are the leading financial helpers within our professions. Julie Harris and her team specialize in working with therapists and mental health providers, both in solo practices and group practices, of helping them navigate the financial side of private practice. They are, again, they are the experts. And if you'll get in touch with them, they'll do a free consult with you to see what your needs are to help point you in the right direction. And again, you can check them out at greenoakaccounting.com. And then our other sponsor that I'm so happy that we have is TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com, and they are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice. They've got a patient portal that is second to none, that also has a telehealth feature so that you can meet with your clients all in one space. Also, their support is second to none, from filing claims to documentation. All of those things you can find within TherapyNotes. So be sure and check them out. And be sure and use the promo code Gordon, just GORDON, and that'll get 2 months of their services for free. So, without further ado, I want to jump into these clips from 2020. This is really the best of social justice, both in and out of the therapy room. And again, special thanks to Bewindi Bobb, LaToya Smith, Linda Sanderville, and Danielle Branche for being with me on the podcast this year and sharing part of their lives and part of their experiences as therapists of color, people of color, Black, brown. I'm one little side note there. I'm still getting my head around the term people of color, and I guess my my problem with it is that still delineates between white people and Black and brown people. And what I would really love is for us to be able to just think of each other as people. But anyway, we need to call that out. So anyway, here is Bewindi Bobb, LaToya Smith, Linda Sanderville, Linda, and Danielle Branche. I think it's so pertinent right now with all that we're going on, and particularly as a Black woman and all that your life's experience and everything. What are some things that you're noticing about our movement with the Black Lives Matter and the changes that's making maybe in your practice or just life in general?
I think the way that I can answer that question is because of my values, so I have a set of values that anchor my practice, my business, and I have a set of values that anchor me personally. They're very, very similar. But faith is a huge value for me. That is the biggest value for me, in addition to the social work values of service and integrity and dignity and worth of a person and all of those values. And so if I were to combine, the values that anchor my business are faith and encouragement and empowering and, just really making sure that I'm also teaching as well. And so if I were to combine all those values together, my Black lives do indeed matter. But what I also believe, I do believe all lives matter according to my faith, according to, because I know that, Jesus died, if that's appropriate on your podcast, Jesus died to break down the walls of hostility. And I know that there's a lot of that going on. But yes, it is a significant message. I am so honored that almost 99% of my practice are all Black people. And they are so honored. I'm honored to work with them. They're honored to find somebody that's there to be able to help them, with all things COVID, and people are reaching out to therapy. I think one of the messages that I could take from this, and I hate that it took movements and it took a pandemic to really encourage people to make the call and invest in their mental health. Seeking mental health, as we know, is a stigma in the Black community. And in a lot of, not just the Black community, but because I also have worked with Asian Americans, and it's the stigma along other ethnicities as well. And so I hate that it took things like this to happen for people to really make the call and seek mental health. But I do see an increase of Black people, Asians, different ethnicities really coming out and saying and showing up for themselves and saying, I need help. I need to process this anxiety. I'm feeling, depressed. I'm feeling sad, or I don't know who I am anymore. And really, really kind of busting through, overcoming their own fears of anxiety, overcoming and really admitting, I am angry. And really underneath, if we were to look at every specific message underneath the violence, there are some deep-rooted mental health concerns and issues. There are some depression. There is trauma. All underneath of all of the whole message, there's a lot of unresolved trauma. There's a lot of losses. People have lost so much. And when I say loss, I'm not just talking about the death of a loved one, but the loss of what life could be, the death of what summer, even now, what summer could be for our kids. And so people are experiencing so many losses, and they are so angry. And yes, the movement creates a way to be able to give an outlet, have an outlet for their anger and hostility and for their feelings, and they want to be heard. And this has been something that's been going on for years, and I don't really know if it will stop happening because of just where we are. But I'm just really thankful that people are recognizing that number one, they need the assistance that is important for them to be the best version of themselves.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think we've got to continue to speak truth to things, and as I've learned and just recognizing my own, the blinders that I've had on for years, just growing up as a white male in the South, and not understanding what it's like to truly live in fear. I think that is the root of it all, is that we've got to stop causing other people's lives to be fearful, and to live with that. And if, as we all know, if somebody lives with fear and anxiety, and that is the atmosphere they're in, it's going to affect their mental health.
It's going to affect their mental health. Absolutely.
Yes. And I just think about, I remember, as we were talking about earlier, I think one of the things that was such a gift for me was working for the agency that we work for, Youth Villages. And we worked with, particularly in where I started with them, worked in their intensive in-home health program, and going into homes and situations where just people were living in poverty and just living in terrible conditions and all of that. And it's a fearful place to have to live. And then just dealing with their kids dealing with parents' mental health issues and all of those kinds of things. And so I think the more that we can shine a light on all of this is where we're going to make the change. And I'm thankful for you, Bewindi, for just doing what you're doing. I mean, it sounds like you're really doing, to use this term, just kind of sacred work and trying to help people and breaking the stigma and all of that. So so thanks for sharing
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
and I know with all things pandemic, it just complicates it because people were already dealing with, Black people, all people were already dealing with their unresolved stress, unresolved, grief, unresolved loss. And then you lock them all in the house, right? And so they no longer have their patterns. They no longer have their routines. It was easy to hide and put on the mask. And that's, I work with people who kind of wear the mask, right? And they want to take the mask off, but it was easy to put on the mask, behind work, behind going to a church service, or behind going to the bar, going to a party, going to the movies. It was easy to mask all those things by doing these things, by having these routines and things in place. But then you take that away. You take the, people not able to visit their loved ones. For some people, that's very, very difficult right now. And so they're left to all of these emotions without having an outlet. That's a lot of emotions. That's a lot of suppressed emotions that has to come out. And unfortunately, we've been seeing it coming out the inappropriate way. But people have a right to feel. They have a right to feel. For some of us, for some of the people, they haven't. We haven't been giving ourselves permission to feel. Without feeling judged, without feeling, without saying, for example, just because a Black person may express their, frustrations, sometimes may be perceived as the angry Black woman or the angry man. And they may not even be angry. They may just be asserting themselves. And so I am so thankful to be in this space of therapy and even coaching, or, to be able to help people find their voice and to be able to say, no, you have a right to say, I feel, or I want, or I need. Of course, how you do it is important, right? But you have a right to give yourself permission to feel. And I'm so thankful for the space that we have, that people don't have to feel judged. They have a brave space, a bold space to just, heal.
And I think also too, when it comes to so many disagreements, especially in the climate of 2020 where we're at in this moment, when we're looking at the divide racially, politically.
Right.
You know, there's so much division. That
yes,
story can also help. Now, there's a lot of help. We need a lot of things, but story can also help to bridge some gaps.
right.
Because sometimes we have no idea where that person is coming from because we're looking at our own judgment and our own biases. But if we learn to set some things aside and learn to listen and connect through hearing somebody's story and their experience, I think that could help to tear down walls or to mend division. Like I said, it's not the only thing, but I think it's a big part of it that we need to start including.
Right. Yeah, because I think, as you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I think when we're willing to hear other people's pain and other people's hurts, we realize that they're no different than all of us hurt and have pain points. And, and some people have experienced greater degrees of pain and hurt in their lives, but that's also what disparages the anger, because anger, at least in my mind, is a superficial emotion. It's what's on the surface.
Right.
But underneath that is fear and hurt.
Right.
And so I think by being able to give people a platform to tell their story, to tell truth to the injustice they've gone through, to all of those things, that's where healing begins.
Yeah. I think so. And I wish I had it pulled up because James Baldwin has a really good quote to what you just said. And if I can find it, I would love to share it. But the idea, I agree with what you're saying. Sometimes we can get so heated and so caught up in being right and so angry. And sometimes, even though it is like that secondary emotion, superficial, it can seem so valid in that moment. But underneath that, there's some similarities. But unfortunately, we don't allow ourselves to get there.
Right. Yeah. So what has really been, this is maybe a little bit of a shift, but I know we had said we'd want to talk about this. With all that is going on with Black Lives Matter, the movement that, started, a couple of years ago, really, but it's really been, under the microscope here lately. What is resonating for you as a person of color right now?
I think the idea of it's with the understanding it's hard to heal. It's like it's always something. I remember when I was younger, I used to always hear my mom say that. It's like a sigh. Oh, it's always something. I still hear her say that, and that's what it feels like. It's always something. When 2020 has been devastating alone. We're not even talking about the pandemic, but from Kobe Bryant passing. I know that had nothing to do with like a racial division, but then we move on, and all of a sudden we hear Ahmaud Arbery, but that was months after that incident occurred. Okay, and then we hear a little bit about Breonna Taylor, but we're like, what happened? And then comes George Floyd. Yeah, and that was huge, and that a lot of protest happened, and then recently Blake happened. Right, his murder in Wisconsin, and it's just. It's like you can't stop to catch your breath. And in the Fort Worth area, Tatiana Jefferson was murdered by police back in the fall. And it's just like, and it's so heavy. Therapists or not, professional or not, educated, trained or not. It's so heavy to the point where you don't even want to see another video. I think I saw something on social media, like, here's the video, police, something in California. I was like, I can't watch the video. I'll read the story when I'm in good space that I can receive that information. But it's so hard. I wish, people who weren't Black especially could understand just the heavy weight that's carried. And a lot of times you have to hear acquaintances, friends or peers who aren't Black, drop their hot takes on, all of a sudden they're the judge and the jury, you know what I mean? Evidence, and I conclude, guilt. And it's like, no, you're looking at this glimpse here, but imagine this weight carried, this systemic racism carried for years. Right. And then, I saw somebody, an old friend from middle school and high school. We were engaging on social media last week, and he was bothered by the NBA players boycotting. Oh, they're jumping to conclusions. If you look at the facts here, like, no, you have to understand they are tired. Blake is the last name. At that point, it was the last name we heard. But this is years that they're they're protesting. You're looking at a single video in seconds. We're not reeling it down to that. And so helping people to understand that it's a heavy weight. It's a lot to process. And just like we would say to any client, you can't, if you're still being traumatized, it's going to be hard to heal. So even and I've seen some posts out there too, like, even Black therapists are tired. Like, because it's a hard seat. Like, you're supporting your clients, but then also having to take care of your own mental health as well. It's a lot.
Right.
It's a lot. And it's nothing, unfortunately, it's not new.
Right. Yeah. It's, and so, I think our tendency is we want to jump in there and help, but I think sometimes, I think we have to give voice, I mean, we gotta, those of us that are white, that have grown up with the privilege that, unfortunately, a lot of us have been unaware. I mean, it wasn't until I was maybe in grad school that I really became aware of, something that was there that I just was oblivious to. And so just becoming aware, and then also being able to call people out when they are also unaware of being able to say that, speak truth to those things. So, So thanks for sharing that, because again, I think it's all about vulnerability, us being willing to hear vulnerability. So,
yeah. And I'm glad you said that too. And I think I love the people who are not Black, or, be able to empathize, and for it to be, truly genuine. I had another good friend, and she mentioned she grew up in San Diego, and she said, I grew up around diversity, but I had no idea about my privilege until this summer. And then, her willingness to wrestle with that, her willingness to face her own privilege, and the things that she said in her past that just, she realized now just are not appropriate. I'm appreciative of the friends I've had that can reach out and not ask me, but just really, at certain times hold space, with me, and just chat, and willing to do their own work, and willing to stand up at their dinner tables or amongst their communities and say, okay, this isn't correct, or we need to look at this differently. I mean, that's what true, ally is. And we see things now, like it's not enough to be, to say, oh, I'm not racist, but no, be anti-racist, like do something to prove it. Don't just point it out like, that's not good. Like, we'll do, put some action behind that.
Right.
Or start certain conversations, or begin to challenge certain systems, especially ones that that you can have influence upon.
And I think, with what I do, my framework that I use with coaching other clinicians and healers, part of that is looking at a liberated identity. And so seeing how my own trauma in my past, and then just ongoing racial trauma. I mean, this year has been in many ways kind of re-traumatizing for me.
Sure.
So recognizing the effects of how I can tend towards devaluation of myself as a result of these other experiences, and sort of working with that and placing them appropriately so that they are not impacting my business.
Right. Yeah. Say more about that, because that's just say that again. Liberated.
Liberated identity.
Yeah. Liberated identity. I love that. Yeah. So what was that process like for you to kind of arrive at that, or arriving at that, or
right, always
it's an ongoing thing. Right,
absolutely. So I think about, as a Black woman, what would I do, how would I do things if I had like white man confidence, right?
Okay. I love this. Okay, keep going.
Right. So I think about, in general, for women, how women in general do not tend to, ask for more money. They don't tend to go for promotions as often, ask for raises. When they do ask, they don't ask for as much as their male counterparts would. And this is like any industry. You don't have to be a clinician. Like, this is just true.
Right.
And so when we lag behind in that way, because we don't have that boldness to just show up and ask for what we want, then we're continuously lagging behind. So then you're talking about like a difference over a lifetime of thousands and thousands of dollars in lifetime earnings, right? Which may equate to millions of dollars lost in lifetime earnings, potentially. So I think for me, it was shifting from a place of like, do I have the right to ask for this? Based on my location, you know, socially, to I have a responsibility to ask for this. I have a responsibility to ask for more, to take care of myself financially, and all the ways that helps me to take care of myself emotionally, mentally, physically. Because as a Black woman, I need to be engaging in really proactive self-care. Like, that's actually a must. It's not optional. And so that's the shift that's happened really pretty dramatically for me. Like, that's my responsibility. And part of that is even, you know, thinking about like building generational wealth. You know, Black people in this country have significantly less net worth than white people in this country. And there's so many things that go into that. But one of the ways that we can address it is making sure that we are earning appropriately. So that's just one example, right? So that's true also for women who are working. And, you know, a lot of times with women who have private practices, there can be this mentality of like, oh, my job is the side job. And you know, maybe like my husband, if you're married to a man or your partner is a man, you know, he has like the real job and I'm doing this thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, no, your private practice is a real job. It's a business.
Yeah. Right.
So are you valuing it as such, or are you kind of sending this message to yourself and to others that it's not so serious?
Yeah.
You know?
It's just my hobby.
It's my hobby. I do, you know, make a little money here and there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's, you know, I wish we had time to just dive into this because this has been something that has fascinated me. There was a book that I read several years ago. You might be familiar with it. It's by Judy Payne, I think is her name. And it's called A Framework for Understanding Poverty. I think I've got the title right.
Oh, okay.
And she was just talking about the mindset of different, for lack of a better way to put it, classes of people. You know, the ultra rich versus the people that are middle class versus those that are, you know, generational poverty, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just how they thought about each other and how they thought about their possessions, all of those kinds of things.
Yes.
And it sounds like you've done some of that work for yourself.
Yes.
And that it's probably, I'd be curious to know when that dawned on you, kind of thing. I mean, like, when was it that just kind of like, oh, this is what it is? I mean, it's just kind of talking about creating generational wealth, which is the opposite of generational poverty, those kinds of things.
Right.
But that's,
No. So, you know, I read a lot. Like I just consume books. And so I just put that on my list. So I'm like, that sounds like it's right up my alley, a framework for understanding poverty. So I've read books that talk about becoming a millionaire. Okay. Because money is not everything to me. It's actually not. But money helps me to do other things that mean a lot to me.
Right.
And so I've looked at, you know, books from people who are in wildly different sort of career paths than us here, who are clinicians, who are building wealth. And it is so different. Like the mindset, the mentality is so different. And one of the things that I'll kind of jumping back a little bit to subconscious money blocks, one of the things I realized, it was sometime earlier this year. I can't even remember how it came about. I think a business coaching program that I was in was talking about this. So if you have negative feelings towards the rich, or whoever you consider to be rich, because that whoever we consider to be rich changes depending on our location. If you have negative feelings towards them, but you also want to make money, then your subconscious is going to help you to never be rich, because it doesn't want you to be that person that you hate or that you criticize. And so I thought, wow, that there's a perception about like, oh, those people do this with their money and that's so selfish or whatever that is. And it's like, well, that's not even true. There's plenty of people who have lots of resources who are finding ways to give that away, to invest in their communities, to support others, support their families. And that's what I want to do.
Right.
I want to give away lots of money. So I can't give away lots of money and support causes I care about if I don't have any.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. Right?
Yeah.
So that was part of it too, was just recognizing like, if I want to shift generational poverty or low standards of living for different communities, I can't just sort of like live in that community and just sort of stay there myself and be like, oh, let's all rise up together. Well, I have to do something different so I can have the resources to be a part of that change and to represent that for others who didn't think that it was possible for them.
Right.
Because I'm a second generation American. My parents immigrated here, and there's a lot of like, just really work hard and, suffering, and it's just what you got to do and grind it out. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I love that. And I think that's a message that somehow I'd love for more of society to get. In that, and it sounds like too, for you, Linda, you've really taken ownership of your own stuff and your own kind of destiny to some degree.
Right.
And I think that's a hard thing for people to overcome, is get out of that kind of poor me kind of mentality kind of thing. And so, I love that.
We talked about this being about the Black community, and I think as an African American woman, as an African American business owner, an African American person who is in charge of a private practice and who started a private practice, I think it is a pull maybe for other African American women to say, you know what, I want to be inspired by that, right? Like I want to feel like I could be a part of that. I want to feel like I could do that myself. All right. And so there have been a couple of therapists that I've had under me, and most of them that come my way, like I said, are African-American women who have come in and then gone out to start their own private practices. And so I just feel honored to be able to even be a part of something like that for somebody's journey.
Right. Yeah. So your practice, all of the people in your practice, the clinicians are also African American women, correct? Yeah. And so how did that come? Was it, if I understand what you're saying, that so far you've had people just come to you, or has there been a point at which you said, oh, I need to add another clinician, or how has that worked for you?
So just recently I've started thinking about expanding and thinking about what it would look like for me to reach out and publicize it. But up until this point, it really has just been just those connections and like just having conversations with other African American women in the community and in our field, and having them feel excited about the work, and feel really passionate about some of the things that we're doing at Branches of Life, and wanting to be a part of that. And so, so far that's how it's come to be. I just feel really blessed.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's, I'm wondering what you're seeing in your practice, particularly given the atmosphere we're in now, which is just an atmosphere of huge change, I think, just, for everyone. What sort of things are coming up for you all clinically, just around the Black Lives Matter movement and just racism and that sort of thing. What is it? Because I feel like, in talking with some of my other Black friends, it's just really heavy stuff.
For sure.
And just really having to process it, not only with clients, but also as a therapist. And what you're learning so far about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the hard part about it is that it doesn't feel new.
Okay.
It doesn't feel different. It just feels like the world thinks it's different or new.
Gotcha.
So it's almost like this quote unquote, I put my fingers in quotation marks here, this secret that somehow only Black people or like people of color and maybe even in some white folks have known, and then now all of America can like see it and can't hide from it, right?
Yeah. right.
Yeah. And so I think when it first started happening, like in the beginning of the summer, it was extremely overwhelming for a lot of for me and a lot of my clinicians, because it was just an overflow of information and overflow of people talking about it and having people advocate for Black people and advocate for different rights and so on and so forth. And in a lot of ways, we had to do a lot of self-care. In our staff meetings, we had to do different things like vision boards. And we've had a couple of times where our staff meeting was just us venting, and chatting about the different impacts that everything is having on us. And I think I've really encouraged all of them to be in therapy themselves, because as a Black clinician who sees a lot of African American clients, it can be extremely heavy because they're pouring and some people are feeling hopeless, and some people are some people are feeling hopeful about the changes and those sorts of things. So it's a bit of a mixture.
Yeah.
I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah, well, you are. I think you're, and you are, I think you echo what I'm, like I said earlier, hearing from a lot of my Black friends just about just the heaviness of it all. And it's just kind of like, finally people are talking about something that's been going on for years. And
right.
I like how you put it, just the fact that what people are, are acting like it was some big secret, particularly, I'll just say it, particularly white people, they act like, this is a new thing and, that sort of thing. But yeah, I appreciate your vulnerability on that and just being able to share that. What would you say, just, it sounds like with your group, you guys are really kind of, your group practice, you guys are really just kind of a real support to each other around just to be able to talk about those things and that sort of thing. And also the fact that you've got a predominantly African-American niche that you're working with, the importance of support and just being able to have supports to draw on, which again, as we were talking about earlier, just kind of some of the themes of the podcast so far, so important.
Yeah.
And it's good that you guys have got that, that network there within your group. Well, folks, I hope that was enjoyable. I know as I re-listened to those clips, it was just, for me, it brought back to some degree a flood of emotion of just thinking about, just really thinking about what it means to have caring and compassion for others. And, I just, I hope that we can continue to build bridges and to really begin to think about each other in society differently. There's just been too much polarization for too long, just around any number of things, both politically and just also around racism and just dividing ourselves out as people. And I think if we're going to succeed as a society, we're going to have to break down all those barriers. So again, big thanks to Bewindi and LaToya and Linda and Danielle for being part of the podcast this past year. Be sure and check out our sponsors for the podcast, Green Oak Accounting, greenoakaccounting.com. And again, if you'll talk to Julie and her team, they'll do a free consult with you and get you pointed in the right direction. And right now is just the perfect time to do that as we get ready to start a new year, and tax season is just around the corner. Just a reminder there. So be sure and check them out, greenoakaccounting.com. And also be sure and check out TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. And be sure and use the coupon code Gordon, just Gordon, and you can get 2 months of their services for free. They're the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice. Well, folks, I hope as you're listening to this, you're having a good holiday season. Depending on how you celebrate it, happy Hanukkah. I know that this episode is coming out during the days of Hanukkah, and also Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a blessed New Year. This has been one heck of a ride this year, just on many, many different fronts. But my wish for you is that you continue to thrive and be resilient and just have a great year, and just surround yourself, even if it's socially distant, those that mean the most to you. So take care, folks. Thank you so much for being part of this journey with me and on the Practice of Therapy podcast. And be sure and take time to subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it, whether it be on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher or one of those wonderful podcatchers, even Amazon Music and Audible now. So pretty excited about that as well. So anyway, take care, folks. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Hope that you have a good one, and look forward to being with you in 2021. It's going to be a great year, I do believe. So take care, folks. Hope you have a good one. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.